Since we covered a tremendous amount of material last night, I thought to start off by asking you if there is anything that you would like me to explain again more slowly and a little bit more in detail. So you have to ask.
Please always use the microphone, otherwise the translator is not able to translate.
Hello everyone. I have a question which is related to yesterday and today.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask the question if you could deepen my understanding of what it means when we say accumulating karma.
What it means to accumulate karma. Well,
Sorry?
that's a very unfortunate way of speaking in English, because that's not at all precise. You don't accumulate karma. What you do is from acting under the influence of karmic impulses, then that leaves as a result karmic potentials, either positive or negative potentials, depending on whether what you did was constructive or destructive, and that's what you build up, so-called accumulate. But you're building up. So they network together. Rather than talking about these things as a collection of merit, it's not really a collection. A collection sounds like it's a collection of stamps, that they are individual entities, but they're not. So this is why I prefer to translate that word as a network, because they network with each other. In other words, the more frequently that you repeat a certain type of action, then the strength of that potential increases. We shouldn't think, so in that way they network together, so the result will be heavier. Or if you apply opponent actions, then the strength of it will be less. So it's very important to understand that these potentials are not static entities. When we talk about karmic potentials that will ripen, it's not that the result is already existing inside the cause. That's the Samkhya view, which is refuted very much with the Buddhist presentations. So the result is not existing already inside in the potential, that what we do is going to affect what the result is going to be. And so in that way, because also if it was already existent, there's nothing that would bring it into existence to cause it to arise. So when people, you hear this phrase, accumulating karma, you are building up the karmic potentials. That's what it means. Yeah. Also, I'd like to come back to karma, but your question first, because as I said, the topic of karma is so poorly understood and poorly explained, I must say. Not poorly explained, not fully explained, explained just one aspect of it, but not really what it is. In the Lamrim text, they never talk about what it is. They only talk about the 10 destructive actions and so on. So that piece is missing. That is actually, Nagarjuna speaks of that in these root verses. But that's not usually, that's not commonly taught. Your question?
Thank you for being here, first of all, and for your wonderful website. Study Buddhism is really great.
Well, thank you.
I had a similar question, probably. I think what is karma is, for me, a little bit unclear on different levels. Like on the conventional level, what does it mean? It's not a boomerang. Probably it's a potential. But also there are karmic streams which are clear in a special direction. It will have a special effect, like be born and die. But then there are other elements which are kind of like potentialities.
Like what? What was that last word?
Potentialities, like
Yes.
potentials. And so I would be very happy about a clearer idea
Well, yes,
of what
this
it
is what I had in mind to
on
explain
different
a little
levels.
bit more
Thank you.
about karma. But it was the gentleman behind you.
Oh, sorry.
No, it is actually also about karma, and that's why I wanted to follow up on this question. I'm curious to understand more the Prasangika view of the disintegratedness aspect, which you...
You have to speak louder for
the
me.
disintegratedness aspect, which I think you pointed to from Nagarjuna's fundamental
Quite
wisdom.
a bit from what?
Which Nagarjuna might also speak about, I would assume, what you meant, that is this or not, this aspect. So I would it would be great to get a presentation from the Prasangika view about karma. Yes. So
Well, those are two topics, karma and the disintegration or perishing. So I'll speak with them about them separately.
Okay.
Okay. There are 4 different views of 5 different views of karma, I should say. There's one which is in the Theravada system that's totally different from what is found in the Sanskrit tradition. And that I'm not that well versed in, but quite different. Then within the Nalanda tradition, there are each of the tenet systems has its own version of karma. So if we and the Vaibhashika and Prasangika one are quite similar, and the Sautrantika and Chittamatra ones are quite similar. So, and this has historical reasons, which I could mention. Sautrantika and Chittamatra developed in Gandhara, which was where Pakistani Punjab and Afghanistan is, whereas and Nagarjuna and the Vaibhashika was more on the Indian side, the Sanskrit side. But in any case, I'll just speak about the Prasangika and just mention the other briefly. Karma is, as I said, a very general word. And so and it means an impulse. We need to differentiate which karmas are included in the second noble truth, the troublemakers, what we're aiming to get rid of, and just general, the different types of impulses. So the most general one is one of the mental factors which is present in every single moment of cognition. And this is the factor of urging. Tibetan is sempa, cetana. And it is dynamic. And what it does is the literal word is that it makes the consciousness shake. So it shakes it up. So it, in a sense, prods it or pokes it. And also the mental factors that go together with the consciousness to perform its function. The most basic one is that it goes to the object. of cognition. And the texts describe it as the magnet which is pulling the iron filings behind it, or the locomotive of a train. So, because the urging goes to the object too, so it is pulling everything to the object. So that is in every single moment. And when we talk about the pathway of this, I'll use, although I said the Tibetan and Sanskrit never uses the word action, but I will use that because it's easier to say. In any type of, the destructive actions or the constructive actions, the consciousness is aimed at the basis of the action. If it's killing the mosquito, or lying to somebody, or stealing something. Consciousness is, seeing the object, for example. So that's part of it, of what that urging is doing. And the urging that is a problem, I mean, the one that is going to be the potential of which will become a throwing karma. See, this is what you want to get rid of. You want to get rid of the acting under the influence of these impulses that are involved with the 10 destructive or the 10 constructive actions. Constructive means that it is together with ignorance. So, in the 3 destructive actions of the mind, mental actions, covetous thinking, thinking with malice, and distorted antagonistic thinking. It's not just distorted, it's antagonistic. You want to argue, you want to repudiate. You want to put down anybody who says that, there's refuge, there's rebirth, there's cause and effect. It's not just thinking, incorrectly about it. Very strong. So this is what is driving the mind during those 3 destructive actions or constructive actions of the mind. We'll just talk about the destructive ones, it's easier. Now, what are those, the pathway of that urging? What is it poking the consciousness during that line of thinking? And that line of thinking is, let's say with covetous thinking, should I steal that thing or not? Should I take that thing that doesn't belong to me? And it thinks it over, and the action is concluded by making the decision. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to take it. Or thinking with malice that I'm going to kill that mosquito. Or thinking with distorted antagonistic thinking, I'm going to, put down, I'm going to argue with this person that says, it's good to be a kind person, or something like that, So, now, in the course of thinking like that, what it gives rise to is a revealing form, it's called. But this is a not yet happening one. You're just thinking, this is what I'm going to do. And so a revealing form is Like I was explaining with the word prajnapti, this is vignapti. So it's causal. It causes you to know something. What does it cause you to know is the only word I could come up with as a general word is the valence, which is used in chemistry. But it is whether the accompanying mental factor, just the disturbing mental factor, is, with that, that is going together with the consciousness. One of the cars on the train, whether that is constructive, destructive, or unspecified. Unspecified is referring to the form and formless realm where, lying and so on is not destructive. So it's unspecified. You don't have destructive stuff in these higher realms. So that if we just speak about on the plane of existence where we are, which is the plane of desirable sensory objects of desire, is what the desire realm means. You don't have these ethereal forms like in the formless realm or in the no gross forms in the formless realm of formless being. So we have objects that we have desire for, that it elicits desire in us. So there, the revealing form, which for Prasangika is the movement of the body or the utterance of the speech, of the voice. We always think of speech, which is, sometimes that's a little bit odd to, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's a little bit odd. I mean, it's talking about your voice. So the utterances of the voice, they are going to reveal that the mind behind it is either destructive or constructive on the plane that we are at. It doesn't reveal the specific disturbing state of mind or absence of a disturbing state of mind. When you talk about the constructive actions, it is not just non-attachment, non-anger, non-naivety. It also is like an opposite of it. It has to be an opposite because, again, as Vasubandhu says, not attachment. Well, the table is not attachment, so that is not specific enough. So it is something which is the opposite of it, that is in the constructive action. So I'm not only not attached, but I am, removed from it, detached, in a sense. So anyway, that's what it reveals. And in the action of the mind, then that gives the initial arising of this revealing form, in which, in a sense, this is how I'm going to, and the revealing form, it's an impulse of the body or an impulse of the voice to do something, to the movement, to do something, the motion, or the say something, as the method with which we will cause that action of body or speech to occur. That is the karma of the body, karma of the speech, karmic impulse of the body or speech. So in the action of the mind, that initially arises, but it's not yet happening. In Buddhism, when we speak about the 3 times, it's not past, present, future. That's Western way of thinking. Not like that at all. We're talking about an event like, today. Well, yesterday, today was not yet happening. Now it's presently happening. And tomorrow, today will be no longer happening. So we're talking about not yet happening, presently happening, no longer happening. Not past, present, future. That's looking at it from a completely different point of view. So when we are just thinking of how we're going to smack that mosquito, I'm going to move my arm like this. Well, that actually doesn't arise in your mind, does it? You don't actually picture, if you are an Olympic diver, of course, you might visualize how your body is going to make the dive. But normally, we wouldn't, necessarily have a mental picture of our arm moving. If we're going to lie to somebody, we might rehearse already in our minds what we're going to say. But not necessarily. Not necessarily. So they say that not yet happening form is not located anywhere. It's not sitting in your head somewhere. So but it initially arises there, is what is said. And it's the consciousness that makes it arise. So that's something else that, when the urging pokes the consciousness, it not only is going to the object, but it's also going to inaugurate, make that initially arise. That's the causal time. Then, so the troublemaker here is the urging, but not the revealing form. Revealing form isn't doing anything. So now we go to the action of the body or speech that follows from this. Taking a life, taking what was not given, inappropriate sexual behavior, etc. The list. 7 of them. 3 of body, 4 of speech. Now here, again, you have an urging. It's mind consciousness and the action of the mind. But now it's sense consciousness in the action of the body or speech. So the sense consciousness, I am seeing that mosquito and going to smack it. Or I only hear the mosquito and I'm going to smack it. Something like that. So the let's say the eye consciousness, when you see that mosquito, that it is taking it as its object. And also now it's giving rise to the revealing form, which is presently happening. Now, the urging here is not the problem. It's the revealing form. The revealing form is what is going to leave a karmic potential, and that can lead to rebirth, become activated at the time of death, to become a throwing karmic impulse, where it pokes the mind consciousness to go to another rebirth. So it's just the opposite here. The troublemaker is not the urging, the troublemaker is the revealing form. in the Sautrantikas and the Chittamatras, they don't talk about revealing form. They accept that there's a revealing form, but they don't say that it is a karmic impulse. For them, the troublemaker in both the actions of mind as well as the actions of body and speech are the urging, the mental impulse. And there's a whole big debate between them, as you can imagine. That's just to put that aside, since we're only dealing with Nagarjuna and what he says. So that's what karma is. The action of the mind, it is the urging that moves the consciousness and the mental factors along during the thinking and coming to the decision. And then in the action of body and speech, it is the motion of the body. And it's not just the motion of your hand, it's the motion of your whole body. And the utterance, in other words, what the voice is producing. And this is, when you talk about the parts of the pathway of the karma, it's the pathway of that original urging. When you thought to do it, it continues to have an effect because you decided to do it. So it continues to have the pathway into the action of body and speech. In the parts of that pathway, it is this, you have a basis, then you have a cluster of mental factors, which will include, we'll get to that, intention and distinguishing and some sort of emotion. This Tsongkhapa put it together. And then this is the third one, which is application. You apply this method, moving your body or uttering something with your speech in order to cause the action to take place. And then it has to reach its conclusion. The mosquito dies, flies off before you try to kill it. There's still a problem. There's still a troublemaker because you had decided to do it. So that's going to have, heavy consequences. If you miss it, well, you haven't actually done anything. If you shoot somebody to kill them and you only injure them, well, you've committed the action of injuring somebody, not of killing somebody. So it's a lesser type of action. So here, it was incorrect what I said yesterday. It wasn't that these other actions, let's say if you just injure someone, it is going to, become completing karma. It's not that. It is that by just injuring somebody, it will produce the suffering of suffering, but not the suffering of rebirth, of getting more aggregates. So it falls in that category. What was called ripening karma by Rinpoche yesterday will ripen into samsaric suffering or samsaric happiness. Okay. Now, there is a third type of karmic impulse, which I didn't mention last night, that Nagarjuna mentions, and this is a non-revealing form. Non-revealing form does not reveal, this is exactly what it says, it doesn't reveal the valence, whether it's destructive or constructive. Valence is like positive or negative of a particle in chemistry. So it's neither positive nor negative. That's all that it indicates. And the revealing form doesn't indicate that. The revealing form is not made of well, the revealing form can't be seen. And the Vaibhashika system is made of particles of the elements. I would imagine Nagarjuna also accepts that. And it continues with the mental continuum until it is relinquished. So what are examples of this? The most important example of it are vows. A vow is, there are positive vows. It is a restraint, basically, is what the word means. It restrains you. It's a restraint from transgressing either. There are certain what is called uncommendable, kanamatoa, uncommendable actions. There are naturally uncommendable, which are the basic destructive actions of killing, stealing, inappropriate sexual behavior, and then proscribed uncommendable. Buddha did not recommend that you do this if you are a monk. Eating afternoon and so on, it's not destructive, but it can be a hindrance to your to clarity of mind if you're going to meditate at night or in the morning. So you don't eat afternoon. So there are certain, and a lot of that, Buddha formulated these things as the occasion arose. And it was basically in order to not have the disrespect of the lay community to the monastic community. So a nun shouldn't, walk with men and, this type of, by herself and so on, because society would suspect inappropriate behavior. Okay, so there are these restraints from, violating what you promised not to do. And then there are non-restraints, avowed non-restraints that you promise, if you are born in the caste of fishermen, that you're going to fish, you're going to kill fish. This type of thing. Maybe in modern times it would be joining the army and you take an oath that you're going to kill the enemy. This type of thing. So now, this continues with your mental continuum until you give up your vows. For example, for the pratimoksha vows, they end when you die. You don't carry them on into future lives. Pratimoksha, by the way, although it's translated into Tibetan as individual liberation, that's not what Vasubandhu explains them to be. Prati, the prefix here, means first. It is your first liberation, the initial liberation. What does it liberate you from? The suffering of indecisiveness. It's wonderful. If you think about that. If you want to stop drinking alcohol and you just, every time that somebody offers you a drink, you have to make the decision, should I take it or not? If you've taken a vow that you're not going to drink, you've made that decision. Period. You don't have that suffering of indecisiveness and having to decide each time. So it's your initial liberation. Wonderful explanation. Makes absolute perfect sense. So, these are the pratimoksha vows. They are relinquished at the time of death. Bodhisattva vows and tantric vows, but this is always just explained in sutra. So the bodhisattva vows continue from lifetime to lifetime. And what they do is they restrain you from transgressing what you promise not to do. Praise self and, put down others. which is what you do when you run for elections. That's why elections are very difficult in the Tibetan community, because it's looked down upon to say, I'm the best candidate and the others are no good. That violates your bodhisattva vows. But it explains, this non-revealing form of a vow, what Shantideva says. Whether you are awake or sleeping, whether you're drunk, it doesn't matter. It is there shaping your behavior. So it does something. This is the word karma. It does something. Something that does something. This is what it does. It either pokes the mind, or it, makes an action take place, or it is restraining you all the time from violating what you promised to do. So, bodhisattva vow, or this avowed non-restraint. And then there's a third type of vow, which is the intermediate. Difficult to say what that really means, but that is when you just do a temporary thing, like I'm going to do 100,000 prostrations. And so it keeps you doing it, that you've promised to do it. It's not lifetime. This sort of thing is in this third category. So that's one type of non-revealing form. Another type of non-revealing form that Nagarjuna mentions is that, and either in a constructive way or a negative way, is building or providing something for others' use. Now, this is very, very interesting. This has to do with if you build a stupa or donate for a stupa, or the same things if you make a donation to the Sangha, to the Buddha's Dharma and Sangha, it said. So you offer food to the monks. The monks and nuns go around begging. That whenever they make use of that, they build up positive karmic potential, and you build up karmic potential. And so Vasubandhu explains two types. One is with giving something material, and the other is non-material. That's the explanation of rejoicing at the positive things that others do. How does that work? They do something nice and I rejoice. So this is, I refer to that, I think the best Western analogy is quantum entanglement, where you have two particles in two distant places, and you do something to one particle, and automatically it affects the other particle as well. So, in a sense, this is the karmic connection that works by the mechanism of a non-revealing form. That you do something positive, I rejoice. We both get the positive potential. I donate to the stupa, you circumambulate. I also build up positive force. Make a Dharma book, others read it, or a Dharma website, others use it. You build up as well the positive force. And then there's the negative one. You build a slaughterhouse to slaughter chickens or cattle, or you offer weapons. You have a factory and you build weapons and so on. So, and others use it, negatively. You build up the negative potential as well. So Nagarjuna mentions these as well. What he doesn't mention, but which is included in Vasubandhu's presentation of this, is when you, the general or commander in the army, commands somebody else to shoot, execute the enemy, that or orders the army to go, bomb whatever, that the general who gives the order builds up as much negative potential as the soldiers. Especially if the soldiers don't want to do it, then there's a whole discussion of, but they're forced to do it, then there's a whole discussion of what type of karmic potential they build up. But that gets into a long presentation, but that's discussed very much. Also, when somebody asks you, I'm in such pain, please put me out of my misery. That also, even though you don't want to do it, you do it. So likewise, you build up negative potential from that. So these are these non-revealing forms. And they're not necessarily troublemakers. You wouldn't say that taking vows is a cause for rebirth, samsaric rebirth. It would be a help for samsaric rebirth. A Buddha has vows. I asked Rinpoche this. And a Buddha, what type of vows, pratimoksha vows, does a Buddha have? Because, you see Shakyamuni Buddha, he's, dressed as a monk, so he obviously has monk's vows. And the vows that a monk has is there's a restraint, but there's also the mental factor of sungsem, what holds you back from transgressing them. And a Buddha doesn't have to have that. Buddha doesn't have that. We have that. That there has to be some mental factor that comes into activity, comes into play, we say in English, then when to refrain yourself. So a Buddha doesn't have that, but it still has the pratimoksha vow, the monk's vow. Okay, so that's the general presentation of karma. What I'd like to add, because I wanted to explain to you the sequence of how we repeat an action. Also, very nicely, what Vasubandhu says, and I'm really quite unclear. I've never heard whether Nagarjuna, whether Madhyamaka would accept it. The problem with Madhyamaka, Prasangika, I should say, problem with Prasangika is that they don't fill in all the details about the mechanics of of karma. You get it in Vasubandhu, but what you get in Prasangika, which is very unusual, I must say, is that what karma is only discussed according to Nagarjuna. Why? Because it's Nagarjuna, and you can't not follow Nagarjuna. So all of the Tibetan traditions do that. However, when it comes to, what are the mental factors, what are the explanation of the 12 links, what are the destructive and constructive states of mind, what are the strength of what affects karma, what are, all these sort of things. All the Tibetan traditions follow a Sangha, the Chittamatra presentation. And but that's where do they follow that? In their Lamrims. Their Lamrims, they never mention what karma is. Revealing forms, non-revealing forms. That's never there in the Lamrim. That's separately in their commentaries to Nagarjuna. And I've looked at all the Nalanda Master commentaries to Nagarjuna, and nobody says anything further except just to explain what Nagarjuna said. whether it's Buddhapalita, Bhavaviveka, Chandrakirti, or any of the later ones. Nobody. It's separate. And then there's all of the Sanghas, the Chittamatra. So why is that the case? And I've not come up with a good answer for that. But a Sangha system is more extensive, and maybe that's why, and it's Mahayana. Thank you very much. So that could possibly be a reason, but it is quite unusual, and they do not commit the mistake of mixing two systems together because they keep them separate, totally separate from each other. So when we read about karma in the Lamrims, and this is everybody's Lamrim, of all four Tibetan traditions, we'll find it explained like a Sangha, but it never says what karma is, because they have to accept Nagarjuna's presentation of that. Okay. So what I wanted to add here is, we have time, this is tonight as well. What I wanted to add here is this clear, what I explained? So don't think of karma as action. It's terrible that it is, lay isn't even the Tibetan word for action. So it doesn't mean action. If it meant action, all you had to do was stop doing anything and you're liberated. So it doesn't mean that. So it's this impulse. And the ones that we want to overcome, like I said last night, were the compulsive ones, the compelling thing that, I'm going to do this. And then compulsively you do it. You repeat the type of action. And now I remember what I was going to say. Vasubandhu adds, another thing that this non-revealing form does is that when you repeat an action within this lifetime, let's say you habitually lie, or you always are, hunting and smacking those mosquitoes in your room, or that lands on you, it's the non-revealing form that perpetuates, connects one occurrence of the action to the next. That's the function of another function of this non-revealing form. It maintains this type of behavior, and that's just not mentioned in any of the presentations of about Nagarjuna. A Sangha would explain it as some sort of seed that continues, a potential. Anyway, the sequence of how this happens, when something, how is it that we repeat something? And the way that we repeat, and this is, again, I must say this is my own analysis, but it seems to make sense, is that first the thought arises. So the thought arises that I am, you hear a mosquito in the room, and then the thought arises, I'm going to kill it. You feel like killing it. Normal things, I feel like having something to eat. We say, I feel like doing that. So that's a conceptual thought that comes up. Now, you have to be aware that you have a consciousness, and then you have a whole cluster of mental factors that go with it. And they share 5 things in common with it, and there are different presentations of those 5, and not necessary to go into all of that detail. But they all aim at the same object, for example. So together with that consciousness, what do you have that are very crucial to our discussion. You always have an urging, takes it to the object, even when you're thinking something. And there is an intention. This is the word dunba. That's intention. How is it defined? It is the wish, the intent. I wish to do this. That's my intent. Intention almost gives the connotation that you've decided already, but you haven't decided. But this is what I want to do, the intent. So I think to smack that mosquito. I think to say something nasty to that person who said something nasty to me. Then there's the urging, the prods it, the intention, what it wishes to do. There's a distinguishing that distinguishes this object from something else. I'm going to swat the mosquito. I'm not going to swat the dog or the cat. Rinpoche said, there's the emotion with it. Disturbing emotion, if it's destructive, because I, don't like mosquito. Well, there's, hostility toward the mosquito. I don't want it to bite me. And there is this incorrect consideration. So we take it to mind. That's the word. Consideration is the same thing as attention. How do you pay attention to it? I pay attention to it as, enemy. As opposed to my mother in a previous lifetime. Or, there are many varieties of this, but that's always there, how we consider it. And we usually consider it incorrectly. Now, the word motivation, Western word, we always think motivation only means the emotion. Does not mean that in Buddhism. It is what causes something else to arise. Even the Tibetan actually means that, gunlong, what makes it arise. Tibetan, the Sanskrit, means that. So, the consciousness, the urging, the emotion, all of those are factors that make, the action to take place, to cause it to arise. All of those are part. Distinguishing. Everything is part of what makes the whole pathway of karma to occur, to arise. So motivation we should think of in a much larger way. So first we think about doing it. I feel like doing it. Then I want to do it. So there you really, the intention is very strong. I want to do it. And then would come the active mind. You think it over, do I really want to get out of bed and hunt this mosquito and smack it to prevent it from biting me while I'm sleeping? And I always think of the British Raj, and you put on a pith helmet and get your rifle out, and now we're going hunting for the mosquito in the room at night because it's keeping me awake. And you're annoyed with it. That's why you felt like getting up. So you get up, and you think it over, and okay, I'm going to get up, and I'm going to hunt it and smack it. So and then so that's the action of mind. And then you get up. And then there's the preliminary part of the action, which is hunting it, and which is also destructive. And there's a revealing form in that, but that's not the troublemaker. Just going around, looking for the thing and trying to find it. wait till it lands on the wall and see if you can be fast enough to smack it before it flies off. And we don't go around killing people, but we do go around smacking mosquitoes that are going to bite us. At least most of us do. And then you actually do it. So that's the sequence. And this is the marvelous thing, is that you can stop the sequence at many different points. I feel like, smacking that mosquito, but I'm not going to do it. So there's an interval. Then I really want to do it, and even then you could not do it. And even if you decide to do it, think it over and decide to do it, you can also not do it. Once you're doing it, you can't stop. Then that's very difficult. When your hand is actually in the motion of smacking it, to stop it before it reaches, the mosquito, that's not going to happen. So you have to be, when you have to watch out. Where can you stop the action from occurring? It's bad enough if you've decided to do it. But, and it's interesting if you think about it. Could you stop it in the middle? I think with a physical action, the revealing form has to be the moment that it actually kills the mosquito. It's not everything that comes before. So I think that would be quite difficult. But if you think about it, lying is a stream of words. You could stop in the middle. Might be difficult to do, but in theory, you could stop in the middle. And if you have a line of thought, should I get up? Okay, I'm going to get up. You could decide not to do it. Or if you are really well trained, just stop thinking. That's if you are well trained in concentration, meditation. The advice, if your mind is racing at night and at bed, well, just stop thinking. Easy. Simple instruction, not complicated. Not easy for most people to do. So anyway, this is, I think, very important to recognize the whole sequence of compulsiveness of how it is that we repeat our behavior. And as a result of these, these committing these 10 destructive actions or the 10 constructive ones, it builds up a potential. The action, it's the karmic itself acts as a potential, and the aftermath of it, and there's different types of aftermath that gets complicated, but the one that is going to become the throwing karma, what gets activated, I won't jump ahead, it will be described here, but the 8th and 9th links are going to activate the potential. And it activates so that it is now, again, an impulse, an urging that is going to poke the conscious. That's for further existence, that's the 10th link called becoming, translated, which doesn't mean anything. So it's for further existence, pokes the mental consciousness to go into death existence, bardo, rebirth, like that. Then there's a whole discussion of which karmic potential is going to get activated, and so on. And of course, there's many, many circumstances that affect that. Okay, so now we can have another question? Question about this, what I explained?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Microphone.
Microphone.
Thank you. Could you talk about feelings, wants, and perhaps needs in trying to develop constructive habits in our Dharma practice?
Feelings. Which
As-
feelings? Are we talking about happy, unhappy?
I think
That kind
you-
of feelings? Or
when
I
you were-
feel like squatting this mosquito? Which feeling?
I think you were saying you might just have a feeling which doesn't have a reason behind it.
Which feeling?
The feeling
Happy,
like,
an unhappy feeling, or happy, I feel like it's going to rain tomorrow? I feel is a very general word. Which feeling?
the feeling I would like to go and do my Dharma practice.
Right. Well, feeling is our Western word. Doesn't correspond to anything in Tibetan or Sanskrit. So how would we describe it? You see, this is what we have to do in order to be able to apply the Buddhist analysis and analytical meditation is we have a Western conceptual framework, and we have to think, how would it fit in? How would it be described in the Buddhist conceptual framework? So when I feel like doing my practice, what is that? That is a thought with which we are mindful once more of our practice, which arises because of not only habit, it's not just an internal cause, but because it's a certain time of day, there's the thing that is available, I have a vow to do that, I mean, all sorts of circumstances, together with the cause. And then the thought comes up, which is, we would refer to that in Western terms as, I remember now to do my meditation. What is remembering? Well, there's the mental factor of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the mental glue. Not the Western usage of the word mindfulness. That's not the mental factor of mindfulness in Buddhism. That's just to notice what's going on in the here and now. That's something else. That's not mindfulness. Mindfulness is the mental glue that when you are, when the mind is focused on something, it is what prevents you from letting go. Concentration is the grip on the thing, and mindfulness is not letting go. And awareness is watching what's going on, and alertness, you ring the bell, ding, 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 you've lost it. And then attention, you bring it back. So, I mean, these factors work with each other. So now I am mindful once more to do my meditation. That's what we call remembering. So it's conceptual, there's the category of doing my meditation. That comes up, and something representing it in your mind, sit down or whatever it is. And then you hold on to that and you don't let go. Do I remember to do my meditation? I feel like doing it, we would say. So there's an element there of the mental factor of intention. I wish to do it. I have the intention to do it. I intend to do it. So that's part of it. And then there can be other mental factors that accompany it, either positive or negative. I don't really want to do it, but, I have to do it. I don't really have time, I'll rush through it as fast as possible. You know, like that. There was another question over here? Yeah.
You said about rejoicing of
Yes.
an action. So the result of rejoicing in an action done by somebody else, is the result the same as the person who does the action, or is it a different kind of result?
Well, they say that it's the same. But results don't arise from just one cause. So there are many things ripen, many potentials can ripen in one thing. One potential can ripen in many things. It's not so simple. This is the point that Rinpoche was emphasizing, is cause and conditions. But it's not just one cause. If you're talking about potentials, it's clearly explained in the text. Many potentials can give rise together to one result, and one can give rise to many. But ordering somebody to do something, to kill, to execute the prisoner, they build up a result of a destructive action of body. You build up, the general builds up a destructive action of speech. So that's different.
If, for example, somebody kills something and does the action with the body, and you just rejoice mentally.
Right, so that would be a result of an action of mind, and theirs would be the result of an action of body. Okay. So I spoke too quickly before.
Okay.
There's also negative rejoicing, Schadenfreude in German. You rejoice in somebody's, misfortune. So it can work both ways. Yes.
Microphone. Yes. Good for this. Also,
please speak into the microphone.
Sure. And yes, if I don't prevent someone from performing a negative action, if I can, how responsible am I?
If you don't if you don't prevent somebody from a destructive action, mm-hmm. do you build up negative potential mm-hmm. when you could stop them? Mm-hmm. That's a difficult question. The example that is given, which is that you do build up negative potential, was that there was someone on who was drowning, and the person on the bank just looked at them and didn't do anything, and so that person built up negative potential, because they could have saved the person. If you couldn't swim and didn't go try to save the person, that's something else. But then it becomes, rather tricky when, for instance, you save the fly from being eaten by the spider. You're kind to the fly, but not to the spider. So that becomes actually quite difficult, doesn't it? I like flies better than spiders.
But maybe the spider won't die because of not eating a fly. But
the thing is that if the spider doesn't eat at all, doesn't get food at all, then it will, as I said, it's a tricky situation. It's a no-win situation. It's the same thing when you have to choose. There's only enough, what's the word? The serum for COVID. when that was first available, there wasn't enough for everybody. How do you choose who's going to get it? First come, first serve? I mean, how do you choose? These are very difficult situations. You know, when there's an accident and, you know, an emergency, 50 people are injured and they come to the hospital and there's only 3 doctors, you know, who do they treat? These aren't easy. Yeah. One last one, and then we have our 15-minute break.
Okay, thank you. I have a question to the result of karma, which we're experiencing in our, let's say, daily life. In general, I say when I've done something bad in my past, and later I experience something bad as the result, is the ripening of karma. So I'm wondering if the result there's another person involved. How does the other person somehow interact with my karma, with the ripening? Do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
Is there any explanation how this is going from one individual to another, that I'm causing the other one to do something bad to me?
Well, we're not causing somebody else to do something bad to us. We are providing circumstances for, you know, one of many circumstances for their karma to ripen, and they're providing circumstances for our karma to ripen. What it ripens into is our experiencing being hit by a car. What is it, that impulse that causes us to cross the street at just that moment and causes us not to look, so that we experience being hit by the car? And what were all the circumstances for that other person to be driving on the road just at that time and not be paying attention? So many things, you know, this is the whole point of understanding the voidness of it, that there's nothing self-established, you know, these little chess pieces, you know, that happen to be in the right spot on the board, and now, you know, this happens. It's not like that. And because it's not like that, it functions, it happens. So you have to be satisfied with the mere functionality, the mere fact that everything works, that it happens without there being these solid pieces. And it's certainly not that I'm responsible for what you do. I provide circumstances, but the root cause has to be, you know, some potential from your side. And it's interesting that if you look in, you know, the result that corresponds to its cause, you know, there's the ripening result and the result that corresponds to its cause and the dominating result of karma. What ripens is the type of aggregates that you have in rebirth. So you're going to have a human body, a chicken body, or whatever. The aggregates, you know, what part of the spectrum of pleasure and pain is your body able to withstand and have? The body of a hell creature can, you know, withstand much more. These creatures that live in the bottom of the ocean with tremendous pressure, or, you know, very cold, you know, they're able to, or in a volcano, they can experience a different part of the spectrum than what we can experience. So that's what you're born with, what type of, what is the capacity of the consciousness, the type of senses that we have. Birds have a sense of magnetism, and we don't have those senses that some of the animals have. And they don't have what we have, in terms of some of them are colorblind or whatever. So that's what ripens. And then, although it's not discussed really, it's sort of happy and unhappy. In general, you could say, what part of that spectrum are we able to experience? But also, you'd have to say what continues, the up and down of happy and unhappy. The dominating results are what dominates a whole group of people, the environment that you're born into, what could dominate in terms of possessions, that people have, and so on. So that's shared, dominates. Overlording, overriding type of result. But then the one that corresponds to its cause, in all the Indian texts and in all the texts up to Tsongkhapa, the only one that is there is what corresponds in your experience. Not the one that corresponds in your cause. That's not there. Remember, what corresponds in its cause is to repeat the action, and that is described because you repeat it several times in this lifetime. So that's a different mechanism. That was this non-revealing form. So Tsongkhapa adds it. And he says, I've heard from some, lamas that they talk about this, that there's this result that corresponds in its cause. And actually, if you look in texts, it is found in, I believe it was Topopa's, one of the Jonangba's texts, which was slightly before Tsongkhapa, that he mentions it, there. So Tsongkhapa heard of it. And he sort of made it a standard thing in what ripens from karma. So this would be why I bring that up, because it is the person that drives the car that hits you. Is that because they have killed in previous lifetimes and now they are killing again? This becomes open to debate of what that is. If you look in terms of just the Indian presentation, it is that impulse that came up for you to cross the street at that time to experience being killed by the car. Your life is short. You are killed by somebody. So that's very interesting, and what is this actual result that corresponds in your behavior? Anyway, just an aside. If you actually look in all the literature, examine the literature, of how these things evolve, how they come about. Anyway, let's have our break, and then we'll continue in 15 minutes. Guru Ratna Mandala Kamneyata Amen. So the second part of your question is about disintegration. So I prefer the word perishing, but because disintegrate seems as though it falls into pieces. Gives that connotation to me, at least. Whereas perish, it just ends. These are difficult words to translate. The discussion arises, I think, from the discussion of what is a moment, kechik. And according to Vaibhashika, a moment, even though it's supposed to have no parts, seems to have parts, but it is the moment that it takes for something to arise, endure, age, and perish. All that is a moment. That's why moments are dynamic in Vaibhashika. And they say that it has to be like that because if it wasn't like that, you'd have to have a certain cause for something to arise and then a cause for it to end, a different cause. So that doesn't make sense. So they put that all together. You get to Sautrantika and they say that a moment, something arises and perishes simultaneously. So it doesn't just, stand there and wait until it perishes. And this you get, everybody asserts after that. It's quite emphasized in Nyingma, in Dzogchen. But in any case, that's an aside. So we have that in Prasangika as well. So it arises and perishes simultaneously. That nothing stays stable. We talk about because if it did, then it would have to be substantially there, sitting there. Now, remember I explained not yet happening, presently happening, no longer happening. So no longer happening is equivalent to perishing. But you have the disagreement that the not yet happening and the no longer happening, according to the Sautrantikas and the Chittamatras, they say that these are static. They don't change. Static means that they're not affected by anything in the change. Something hasn't happened, it hasn't happened. Doesn't matter when. It hasn't happened, that doesn't change. And it's no longer happening forever. My dog died, it's dead forever. Type of thing. But Vaibhashika and Prasangika, as I said, it's amazing. We put down Vaibhashika as the lowest school, but actually there's an awful lot in common between Vaibhashika and Prasangika. So both of them say that no longer happening is, not yet happening. It's not yet happening in 3 days. It's not yet happening in 2 days. It's not yet happening in 1 day. It is changes, it is non-static. And the same thing, no longer happening. It's no longer happening for, 1 moment, 2 moments, 3 moments. So that changes. And when you talk about the perishing, arises and perishes simultaneously, then in the next moment, it is the having perished, the past tense of that. So it has already perished, in a sense. So the already perishing, now it's a noun, which is very difficult to say in any language. So it's a difficult word. But it is of the nature of the perishing. So something, this is one of the most difficult topics to understand. So bear with me. But if something perishes, each moment after that, it also is going to perish. And so this provides a continuity that the having perished, let's put it in simpler language. Let's say the 1st of September perished. It ended. Let's pretend that it's just for one moment. That ended, and so now on the 2nd it has ended already. It has perished, and then it's going to the 2nd is going to perish, and it's going to be the 3rd. So it's having ended on the 2nd is now having ended on that. Having ended on the 2nd is having ended on the 3rd. And that's having ended on the 4th, having ended on the 3rd has ended. And so like that, you get, it helps to understand the continuity. Now, the shikpa, the having perished, can be of an episode of anger. And how is it that they connect to the next episode of anger? I was saying this non-revealing form. I haven't seen. It's not explained in the text, but this could be another mechanism of how it continues, because the having perished provides a continuity. So when we have, remember, when we've committed an action, so the karmic impulse of it has ended. And you get, because that having perished, that impulse. So let's talk about the whole karmic path. So the whole thing the episode is finished. Well, how do you get the continuity between that and the result arising? This is a big, big issue of how the connection is made. And so one way of explaining it is, that karmic act has perished, and then that has perished, and then that has perished, and that has perished, and, like that. The connection is maintained. A continuity, so that then there's the same thing with the not yet having arisen, the not yet happening of the result arising, of happening. That's the same thing. It has not yet happened, and then that has not yet happened, and then, they don't explain it, with a technical term, but it's the same mechanism. So this is a very sophisticated way that helps to explain the connection between an episode of anger and the next episode of anger, or karmic cause and a karmic effect. So that is our friend, the perishing and the having perished. Okay? Not an easy topic. Not an easy topic. Yes.
Could you relate how purification then plays a role within that view, ending the continuity of the perishing of an action?
Okay. Purification, if we have, there's two scenarios, two scenes. One is that the karmic potential has already ripened. It's finished giving its result. And the other is that the karmic potential or seed has been, in a sense, neutralized or neutered by purification practice, whether it's 100,000 vajrasattvas, which, by the way, for it to be effective, has to be with 100% concentration and motivation and so on, not just blah, blah, blah 100,000 times, which is easy to do, relatively easy to do, really difficult to do it with every single repetition with concentration and the proper motivation. But anyway, theoretically possible. Or, any other counteracting actions that we might do, with the four opponent forces, regret, and so on. So those are two scenarios in which either it's no longer giving a result, or it is has been neutralized. It's not going to give its result. And then Tsongkhapa says, this is one of the unique features of Gelugpa, Tsongkhapa, is that the burnt seed continues. So it's a burnt seed, but the burnt seed continues, and it is going to now become an obscuration, a cognitive obscuration. So it's no longer, the karmic obscurations span the emotional ones and the cognitive ones. So now it's no longer going to give rise to, all the ripening results and all these sort of things, but it will prevent us from being omniscient. And it will prevent us from, it will contribute. Why are we not omniscient? It's because we don't see the voidness of everything. The mind still makes the appearance of of self-established existence. That's what the cognitive obscurations do. Even if we know that that is complete nonsense, doesn't correspond to anything. Nevertheless, the mind makes that appearance, and so because of that appearance making, we're not able to see the full, interaction of everything. And everything, depends on everything else. So, cognitive obscuration. So these burnt seeds continue, this is what Tsongkhapa calls them, and now contribute to the cognitive obscurations. So purification purifies something, purifies it being a emotional obscuration, but doesn't purify it from being a cognitive one. So good enough. It's not going to produce suffering, which means what you get rid of with the emotional. It's a different type, different level of, different subtlety of suffering. This is the suffering on the advanced scope. The advanced scope suffering is that I am not able to benefit all beings because I have these cognitive obscurations. I don't know skillful means like the Buddha knows, because the Buddha knows the effect of anything that he would teach. So that is the limitation of the advanced scope, the suffering of the advanced scope that you want to overcome. Each scope has its different level of subtlety of suffering. This is the problem on the advanced scope. Self-cherishing is behind that. But what really is your problem is that you want to help everybody, but you're limited. Self-cherishing, then you don't want to help them. But that should have been taken care of on the intermediate scope already. Okay. Some more questions? Yeah.
So yesterday you talked about dependent origination, and I have a question about how does dependent origination work when the object is dependent on the mind, and what
How does it work on?
Like, can you explain?
Dependent on the.
Can you explain dependent origination, where the object depends on the mind? How does it work? And I heard this explanation as the object being dependent on a valid base, a conceptual mind and name. But I wonder, how does it work without the conceptual mind part? Because it bugs me.
Dependent arising, as I mentioned, is referring to this relationship of that two things. In order to know something, you have to know something else. That is its basis, in a sense. What I didn't mention yesterday is that the Tibetan translation of this gives a much clearer, not a clearer, but it explains it from a different point of view. And the Tibetan word, which is translated as imputation, actually means tied. Like two things are tied together. So this is a very good is to tie. So to know this, it's tied with that. So the whole is tied to the parts. Well, that object non-conceptually, you see, when I see, as I said, the front of your body, I don't see the back of your body, but this is the difference between Kalapa and, also, it's not only Kalapa, it's the true aspectarian and the false aspectarian is the technical term. Sorry for our German translator. But the question is, through any of our senses, you are only able to know one sensory field. I don't, by seeing you, seeing the body, I don't, with my eye consciousness, I don't smell your body, I don't taste your body, I don't hear your body, when your bones crack, I don't, have the physical sensation of your body. And in each moment, I only know one moment of it. The form is going to be in a different shape the next moment. So now the question is, in that sense perception, do you also perceive the whole object that endures over all the sensory features and endures over time? That's the whole. Or do I only see part, and is it a conceptual construct, the whole? And that's only known through conceptual cognition. So that is the true aspect, is the mental hologram that arises. Is it true or is it false? Is it truly also the whole, or is it false? In a sense. So the true aspect, and the Kalapa tends in the direction of the true aspectarian, and non-Kalapas tend in the direction of the false aspectarian. So from the Kalapa point of view, the whole is tied to the parts and you actually see it non-conceptually. So that's non-conceptual. Also, since that comes up and I wanted to mention it, in terms of the sequence of the tenet systems, in terms of dependence on the mind, is why this came up to why I recalled what I wanted to explain. The Chittamatra prepares us for Madhyamaka, for Prasangika, well, for Madhyamaka in general, because what Chittamatra is saying is that the appearance of things, the conventional appearance of things, depends on the mind. You know, you can't prove that something exists externally before it's perceived. So the appearance, our mind makes an appearance of it, so the appearance of it, like a mental hologram, that's called the aspect. I describe it like a mental hologram. It works like that with physics as well. You know, light enters your retina, and it stimulates that, and then it's translated into an electric and chemical signal along the neural pathways. And in a sense, one part of the brain makes like a mental image. You know, we see something. You're not actually seeing that object out there. It's the mind is making some mental hologram of it because it's been translated into light and stuff like that. So it's not so far-fetched. That, what was I saying? What was the point of that? That aspect the Chittamatra. Okay, thank you. So the appearance, the conventional appearance of things is dependent on the mind. So that prepares us to know that the deepest level of how you establish that it exists is dependent on the mind, which we get in Madhyamaka. So it prepares us for that. So it is a step in the understanding. So that's why, another reason why the sequence of the tenet systems is very meaningful to go through them. Okay? Big question mark in your head, over your head. But anyway.
But how does the dependent arising work?
How does dependent arising? They are mutually dependent on each other, the whole and the parts. And first you see a part, and then you see the part and the whole.
But this is not the mind. It's dependent on, like the part is dependent on the whole.
It is dependent in terms of the appearance of it. How do we cognize it? So the appearance of you only see the part, the whole. The thing exists on as a whole. How do we know? How do you know that the back of your head exists? How do I know that? Maybe there is no back of your head. Maybe you are a two-dimensional being. I don't know. So that appearance, is how it appears to me is established in my mind, with the mind. And either I non-conceptually see the whole body with all its sensory features, and that has continuity over time, even though each moment it's changing, but still it's not something completely new the next moment. Completely different. It's not identical, it's not different. So, you get into that whole discussion. But how it appears, what it appears to be, and just the appearance in general is dependent on the mind, of course. And the whole and part are dependently arising. The dependent, it's not dependently arising on it's dependently, the mind is a factor, but when you talk about dependent arising, that doesn't mean totally dependent, that it's not, there's a lot of words that are translated as dependent, the support, the basis, and so on. So they're not all the same as dependent arising. That's another word.
Thank you.
Right. There's 6 or 7 different Sanskrit words with different definitions of something that supports something else. Go on. The whole depends on, something is going to depend on the elements. It's not dependently arising from the elements. Things depend on many things. Depends on light to be able to see. It doesn't mean that it's dependently arising from the light. So it's different.
When
it's on.
Okay.
There's a little blue light on the bottom.
For example, when we see
if there's a blue light, it's on.
Okay.
If it's a red car, it's a Ferrari. Yes, go on. No provision.
So, when, for example, we see the body of a person, and then the mind makes up the label, for example, Peter.
Yes,
So,
a name.
in effect, can we say we do not really see Peter? We never see Peter.
Well, we see a person.
But even the person...
But the person is not a name. Name is just a word, it is a sound which by convention a group of people have agreed that it has meaning. And we're using it as a name to refer to an object. That's all it is. There's a sound.
So you never see a person?
No, you see a person, but you don't see a name. Unless it's written on there, there.
But you see only the aggregates of the person.
No, you see a person as well. I see you, I don't just see a body.
But because the person is just a label...
Person is not just a label. That was my point of making the difference between the category I know your name, but I cannot recall it at this moment.
Felix.
Pardon?
Felix.
Felix. Every time that I see you, there's the category of this particular sentient being, and on that category there is designated a word, a name, Felix. Now, every time I see you, what I see is different. You're wearing different clothes, you're sitting in a different posture, or doing something different. And I conceptually see that through the filter of that category of It's the same person. So that is how I, conceptually am able to know you. That each time I see you, it's Peter. I mean, that it's the same person that I'm seeing, and the name that is applied to it is Peter. Maybe your mother called you something different when you were a child. So, Petey or whatever. But in each moment, I'm seeing the person. Each moment I'm seeing a person, so that's non-conceptual. And how do I see the same person over and over again? Because I fit them into the category as the same person. That's conceptual. And the name is applied to that concept. I mean, in the West, we speak in terms of an idea. This is my idea, my concept of Felix. I have an idea of who he is, and each time, I fit it into this idea. Or I have an idea, we have ideas about anything. A concept of it. And it's not just the concept. This is what I was referring to. There's all sorts of associations with it. This is the concept of blue cheese. So it has a certain smell. I don't like it. It's no good. We have all sorts of associations, or I love it. It's fantastic. So we have all sorts of associations with our ideas of something, with our concepts of something. So it's not just, this is what I was saying, what representative, you could just be a thing, or it could be also all the characteristics of it. Something wonderful, something not wonderful. We will get into that, but the mind makes things appear attractive or unattractive. That's also coming from some karmic thing. It's not that it is attractive or unattractive established on the side of the object. Otherwise, everybody would find it attractive or unattractive, or beautiful or ugly. All of that's established from the mind. So those are characteristics associated with the category. It's not just this particular thing doesn't taste good. All blue cheese doesn't taste good to me. So it fits into the category. So it works like that. Cognition theory is really, really important. And there are two very different, basically, they're variations of it, two very different systems of how cognition is explained. What the Galupas, accept, and what the Nyingmas and Sakyas. Kargyu, one of the Karmapas, had a slightly different variation on the one that the Nyingmas and the Sakyas take. You have to understand, any of their assertions has to fit into the cognition theory, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Especially when they talk about non-conceptual and conceptual, but really you have to understand what their system is. They're completely different. You had a question in the back.
Thank you. I hope that doesn't go too far. It's about this theory of cognition, how it works in the sense of the abhor, like the exclusion of other thing. If you have a concept.
Yeah. You want to go there? Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it goes.
You asked for it.
Yeah, I do. Really, it's a rare opportunity to ask something like that. So. How does it? it goes very far. I know to understand where it comes from debate of Dignaga with and Dharmakirti with the Hindus, to have this system of the Anyway, how is how can you defend that to understand something you exclude everything else? How is that not like an how to say it sounds like a very artificial idea in a way. It tries to not have universals that are real, as far as I understand.
They're not universals, that's to start with. To start with, that is a Western concept.
Okay. Anyway.
Right. No, I mean, thinking in terms of universals and, generalities and so on, you're mixing two conceptual frameworks there. That comes from Western metaphysics. And that's why I use the word category. Mm-hmm. It's not a universal that everything has, that nature within it, or generality sounds that it's nature general. It's not specific. It's just a category like set theory. It's the set of these things. Okay, the way that I like to translate, we're talking about specifiers. How do you specify something? And you can only specify by saying it is nothing other than what it is. These are nothing other thans, dokpa. Nothing, because it's a double negative, but it's not what it's not. But that you can't say that in our languages. So it's nothing other than. What is a cup? It's nothing other than the cup. So you've excluded everything that is other than the cup, and it's what's left over. That's how you specify it. Otherwise, you'd have to specify it from something on the side of the object. So you can't there's nothing on the side of the object. There's an individual defining characteristic, otherwise you couldn't distinguish it. But you are distinguishing nothing other than the cup. So there are two types of these. There is one which is a mental nothing other than. There's a technical term for that, which Simon probably knows. I can't just loi something or other. Something or other. And so that is how you specify a category. And then there is the one that is Tsenshab something or other, that specifies the something in non-conceptual cognition. So I see the object, that's what is explicitly appears, and implicitly I know that it's nothing other than what it is. So nothing other than doesn't actually appear, but it is known. Because it's like, when I see an apple, I also implicitly see not an orange, not a dog, not all these things, and it's also nothing other than what it is, the apple that I'm seeing. And the same thing if I think in terms of the category of apples, then it's also nothing other than. So then this nothing other than, then you get into, you really want to get into this? No, because then you get into the nothing other than is the type of negation phenomenon that it negates something, so everything that's other, but also, after in the footprint of it, in the wake of it, like in the boat, what's left behind in the boat, the waves or the footprint of it. What is left in the footprint is a negation and an affirmation. It's nothing other than, everything other than is the negation, and what it is the affirmation. It leaves that. So this is quite relevant in terms of how you understand what appears in a conceptual thought. So it works like that. Because it's a negation phenomenon, then you can have something representing the category. When I think of my mother, every time there's a different mental image that comes up. So that's because the category is a nothing other than, and it, leaves behind also what it is, so something that can represent it. It works like that. Okay? It's fun. You have to find all of this stuff fun. You have to, this is a sign that when thinking about voidness and so on, there's this one level that Rinpoche was referring to, that it makes you happy that there's actually a solution, there's a way out. But there's another aspect of it, is that you have to enjoy it. It has to be fun to think about it, to analyze it, to make things clear. That gives you a great pleasure, actually. Otherwise, I don't want to do this meditation, it's not fun. So you have to find it fun, enjoyable. Yeah. So that's a lesser level of what Rinpoche was talking about.
I just want to talk a little bit more about this cup you were talking about. So nothing else than the cup.
Nothing other than the cup.
So
it's nothing other than
the cup.
It's nothing other than the
but
cup.
Do we need also additionally a certain function of the cup to define it? Nothing other than the cup is one thing. I carve it out of everything else. But nevertheless, it has to have a function to be a cup, to appear to me to be a cup. Because let's say when an ant looks on the cup, it looks like a mountain. It's definitely not a cup. For me, it's a cup because I can use it as a cup. But whether it has, for example, this handle or not is not important for the cup. It's also without the handle, it's also a cup. So therefore,
fits in the category of cup.
Then it's a category, but the category is defined by its function, isn't it? It's not only by taking away everything which is not cup, it also has to serve as a cup.
Well, that's why I said it has there is a defining characteristic.
Exactly. To serve
so there is,
as a
otherwise
cup.
You couldn't distinguish the cup from the table.
Exactly.
I can't drink out of the table.
But, exactly. That's it. So we need both. We have to subtract everything which is not
but
the cup.
But the define. Just because it's nothing other than what it is, doesn't exclude that what it is has a defining characteristic, because you can distinguish it. It allows you to distinguish it. So what is the defining characteristic? It can be what it functions as.
Okay.
And then the Vaibhashikas and the Sautrantikas would say that it's the fact that it performs a function establishes that it exists. And that, the Prasangika would say, no, it doesn't have the power to establish that it exists. So there's several levels of defining characteristic. There's one defining characteristic that just defines it as a validly knowable object. What I was calling a thing. It makes it a thing. It's like it encapsulates it in plastic. Or it's something like in a children's coloring book. So it's a thing. And then there's another defining characteristic that makes it a specific. So for both the ant and the human, it's a thing. But what it is and how it functions is different. And the defining characteristic is a convention made up by convention, by a group of people agreeing. So all of our minds, because of the cognitive obscurations, the habits of grasping for, self-established existence, because of the habits, it makes it appear like that. And as a thing. And then our own particular species and so on will, give it a defining characteristic. I mean, somebody who's never seen a cell phone, what is it? It's a black rectangle. Why are these people carrying around black rectangles with them? That's very weird. It really is, if you think about it. And looking at it all the time. Addicted. Maybe this is like a Hindu ritual that you have to carry a pot of water from the Ganges River. So these people belong to some other religion, and they have to carry around a black rectangle with them. It's a sign that they belong to. Some people will have a cross. These people have a black rectangle. Very strange. But, you don't know the function. I always think of this example, do you know what a telephone booth is? I mean, maybe they don't even have them. A telephone booth, well, imagine archaeologists 1,000 years from now dig that up, and they have no idea what it is or how it was used. Is the function of it established on the side of the telephone booth? Where is the function of it? There's this black thing that looks like a nozzle. Maybe it's a shower. Maybe water came out of it. No idea. It's very interesting to think in these strange ways.
So would they see a telephone book?
No, they wouldn't see a telephone booth. What do they see? They see a thing. They see a thing. And they would give it a name, relic from an ancient civilization. That's what it would be for them. A relic. They have no idea what it is. So it's not established as a telephone booth from its own side.
And to see a thing comes from
The
us having
cognitive obscurations. Because to see a thing means that we see still photographs. And the universe does not exist as a still photograph. That's a very important thing to try to understand, We tend to have things, we imagine things are like in a photograph. It's frozen. That's the way that it is. Remember, I said that everything arises and perishes simultaneously. Doesn't stand still for a selfie. Yeah. Oh, it's 5:30. We can do a quickie. And then we'll continue this evening at 7:30. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. Yeah.
The question I have is about things.
Stuff.
Yeah, stuff. Yes, because do you know the net of Indra?
The net of Indra?
Yes.
Yeah, I have. Yes.
I was seeing it in a book about Buddhist dialectics or something like that. I can't really remember.
That Buddhist what?
Buddhist dialectics.
Yes.
And I was wondering, or I came to the conclusion that things are not existent. What exists are just relations. And this is all a network of relations. But what to do with that?
Now you're going to the position of the Nyaya school, the non-Buddhist school, that the relations are like, everything is like balls, and the relationships are things that are a stick that connects the balls. It's not like that. Not like that. Indra's net, for those who are not familiar, is a net in which there is a mirror on each of the intersections, and everything is reflected in every mirror, which becomes very interesting if you know about hologram, the physics of hologram technology, or fractals, that the pattern of a snowflake is present in every level of the snowflake, like that. So, I mean, we have something like that in physics. So everything reflects from everything else, but it's not as though, so everything is interrelated is what it is, the aspect of it, but there isn't these sticks connecting things. That's in Nyaya theory, that the different types of relationships are things. So Buddhism doesn't assert that.
And aren't the end of in the beginning there's nothing but, I don't know.
In the beginning there was nothing?
Yeah, and then the first distinction made up the first two things.
No, that sounds like Neo-Confucian theory of Juzi. Jushi, I'm sorry. No, it's not like that. From the, undifferentiated becomes, yin and yang, and, then it... no, that's not the Buddhist thing either. There's no beginning. There's no sequence like that. There is the interrelationship between things. There are many different types of relationships between things, but they aren't self-established entities like a stick connecting things. But it isn't that, we don't perceive anything. It's undifferentiated mass. And then our mind with, if you take Jushi's philosophy and put it on a personal level, that then the mind differentiates. This is another type of mutual dependence. That self and other, self and you, arise dependently on each other. So yin and yang arise dependently on each other. You can't have this without not this. So, I mean, that Chinese philosophy does make sense, but it is not a sequential thing. That from that, then you get the multitude of, all things. So that's a different conceptual framework in which these things are truly existent. And then the whole Buddhist thing is, how can a nothing give rise to a something? If it's truly a nothing, it can never give rise to a something. Which then becomes a very interesting question in terms of, when does life start? The whole question of abortion. Before this point, it's a nothing, and now it becomes a something. Well, that's pretty weird. But when is it when does it become a something? And this is, an important thing to analyze. When they have this thing, before 3 months it's a nothing, and then it's a something. Okay, so let us and for this afternoon. And we will continue this evening. More fun. Because there's some things to explain. Is there? Yes, I want to explain to you the difference between ignorance and self-grasping. They're not the same. Not the same. We need to get some clarity about that. Okay?
Saji Bukki Chukshi Meto Jam Rira Lingzik Nide Gempadi Sangye Jingdu Mete Uwagi Jogunam Dak Jingla Jebasho Jetun Lame Kutir Rapten Jing Namga Dinle Chuchu Gepadang Losang Tembe Deme Sasumgi Dove Munsel Tak Tunik Yujik Yadam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. Shall we do dedication prayers longer? Maybe
sure, why not?
Right now or in the evening? We can do it now?
Why not? Never hurts.
Chita Tupe Donla Dikbashi Nindang Zendu Sulchin Raptagne Samje Nilset Samle Chungwayi Namche Loye Tetsum Chupashu Gangri Rawe Kowe Tsingam Nia Pendang Dewa Malu Chungwene Chenre Sigwang Tenzing Gatsuyi Sabe Shide Badu Tengyo Ji Kiba Kundu Yangdag Lama Dang Delme Jegye Bela Long Jing Sadang Langi Yenten Rapzogne Doje Jangi Gopang Tunu Shu Champel Pava Tita Kepadang Kundu Sambo Deyang Deshinte Deda Kunge Jesu Dalo Chir Geva Dedak Tamche Raptung O Dusum Shakbe Galba Tamche Gi Ngoba Gangla Choktung Ampa Dage Gebe Tabadi Kun Kyang Sangpo Jujir Abtung Owargi Temparin Jenjoge Magyapam Kyap Kyang Nyampa Gyobe Chokderni Ningche Chenpe Yirab Kyopayi Pende Dere Selva Jeparshu. And I thought for auspiciousness, let's recite Rinpoche's long life prayer so we can create the causes for Rinpoche to become healthy and teach us again tomorrow.
Very good.
Om Swasti, may all be auspicious. O charming Lady of Seven Eyes, Supreme Mother of the Triumphant, exceptional deity skilled in bringing a great rain to fall of the actual attainments of deathless long life, positive potential and deep awareness. Please grant here and now the utmost in fulfilling the aims of my prayers. By the force of your matchless dedicated heart to uphold the teachings, may you live a long life to further the essence of the deep and extensive guidelines that the Able One taught, as a Lord wielding power over the ocean of reason and speech, as a lamp for the teachings of the excellent-minded, for the sake of leading to a state of peerless enduring bliss, all wandering beings oppressed through bondage to their compulsions and disturbing minds. May you live a long life fulfilling all infinite hopes through the extensive deeds of your stainless three enigmatic gates. May your dedicated heart once more reach out to strive in serving the Triumphant One's teachings through your three pure rounds. I request you long to remain as a guiding light for wandering beings in accord with your will in the lands of disciples in every direction. By the power of the inspiration from the hosts of lamas, deities and protectors, by the force of the truth of non-fallacious dependent arising, by the strength of regard from the exceptional resolve of myself and others, may all the aims of my prayers be exactly and fully fulfilled.
Dedication is something that, death can come at any time. So any positive thing that we've done, we can dedicate. You don't need verses. Death can come very quickly. You just, in your mind, you give it a push in the, whatever positive force there is. We want to, there are two folders in the network of positive, potential. One is the enlightenment folder, but the default setting is that it goes in the improving samsara folder. You don't want it to just go into the improving samsara, that I'll be able to have a nice, interesting conversation about this, but you want it to go into the enlightenment folder. So for that, you have to press a key to make it go there. Otherwise, default, it'll go in the wrong folder. So, and you don't need to, recite anything. Just in your mind, do it, Recitation is just to, help us and so on. That's like in meditation. Meditation, you go through things slowly. When the Lord of Death comes, it doesn't wait for you to sit nicely and set the motivation and all of that. The old Serkong Rinpoche. Whole Lamrim you should be able to do in the few seconds that it takes to put one foot in the stirrup and the other foot over the horse. Just a few seconds, the whole thing. The whole thing means you're really familiar with everything and you see how it all fits together. You get it all in one mind. That's what you're aiming for with Lamrim. Otherwise, you need hours to go through all the points. Death isn't going to wait for that. So it's a very important thing to think about. Slow is only the very, very beginning. All this stuff should be instant, without having to go through a line of reasoning. That's the, uncontrived bodhicitta path of, the path of building up. The first path is when you can get bodhicitta just like that, instantly, without having to go through any, 7-part cause and effect, or all of that stuff. It's just there. That's what we're aiming for. So the same thing with the dedication. It's just there. Okay, thank you.